Bonjour, culinary enthusiasts. I'm Kip Ferguson, your guide on this delicious journey through time. Today, on Culinary Cuisine Journey, we're stepping into the lavish world of French cuisine during one of the most transformative periods in history, the Age of Enlightenment. The 18th century in France wasn't just about philosophers, grand ideas, and revolutions. It was also a time when the culinary arts underwent a significant evolution. The Age of Enlightenment brought with it a wave of intellectual, cultural, and social change that rippled through all aspects of life, including the kitchen. During this era, French cuisine began to shift from the hearty, rustic meals of the past to the refined, artful dishes that we now associate with haute cuisine. But what sparked this culinary revolution? Well, it was a blend of societal shifts, influential chefs, and the rise of a dining culture that celebrated sophistication and elegance. In today's episode, we'll explore how the Enlightenment period shaped French culinary traditions, giving birth to techniques, dishes, and dining customs that still influence the world of food today. From the emergence of grand cuisine and the first modern restaurants in Paris to the iconic dishes and sauces that became the hallmark of French cooking, we'll uncover the rich history behind this gastronomic transformation. So, whether you're a history buff, a foodie, or just curious about the roots of French cuisine, this episode is sure to whet your appetite. Grab a glass of wine, sit back, and join me as we journey into the age when French cuisine truly became an art form. Let's set the stage for our culinary exploration by diving into the historical context of the Age of Enlightenment. Picture 18th century France, a time of grand salons, philosophical debates, and a burgeoning sense of curiosity and innovation. This period, often referred to as the Age of Reason, was marked by an intellectual movement that emphasized reason, science, and the questioning of traditional authority. But what does all this have to do with food, you might ask? Well, quite a lot, actually. The Age of Enlightenment was a transformative era for many aspects of society, and the culinary world was no exception. Prior to this period, French cuisine, while rich in tradition, was relatively simple and grounded in the needs of sustenance. Meals were often hearty, prepared with local ingredients, and influenced by medieval cooking traditions. However, as France became the cultural and intellectual hub of Europe, food began to take on new meanings. It was no longer just about feeding the body, but also about nourishing the mind and soul. One of the driving forces behind this shift was the changing social structure of France. The rise of the bourgeoisie, or middle class, created a new demand for dining experiences that reflected their aspirations. They wanted to emulate the nobility, who had long enjoyed elaborate feasts and sophisticated culinary experiences. This desire for refinement in dining led to innovations in both the preparation and presentation of food. At the same time, the Enlightenment's focus on reason and knowledge began to influence how people thought about food. The idea that food could be studied, categorized, and improved upon was gaining traction. Cookbooks, which had previously been rare and mostly handwritten, began to be published more widely. François Pierre La Varraine's La Cuisinière Française, published in 1651, is often cited as a precursor to this shift, but it was during the 18th century that such works truly began to flourish. These cookbooks didn't just list recipes, they reflected the Enlightenment ideals of order, logic, and experimentation in the kitchen. Culinary techniques became more refined, as chefs began to focus on enhancing the natural flavors of ingredients rather than masking them with heavy spices, as was common in medieval cooking. The concept of haute cuisine started to take shape, emphasizing balance, subtlety, and the artful presentation of dishes. This was a significant departure from the more rustic and robust cooking of previous centuries. Another key factor in the transformation of French cuisine during the Enlightenment was the rise of Paris as a center of cultural and intellectual life. Parisian cafes and salons became gathering places for the intellectual elite, where discussions about politics, philosophy, and the arts often included conversations about food and dining. These gatherings helped to elevate the status of chefs who were no longer seen merely as servants, but as artists and innovators in their own right. It was also during this period that the concept of the modern restaurant began to take shape. Before the Enlightenment, dining out, as we know it today, was virtually non-existent. People typically ate at home or, if they were traveling, at inns where meals were simple and communal. However, by the late 18th century, Paris saw the emergence of the first true restaurants, establishments that offered individual meals from a menu and provided an alternative to the formal dinners of the aristocracy. These early restaurants were more than just places to eat. They were social spaces where people could gather, discuss ideas, and enjoy the pleasures of refined cuisine. The very word restaurant comes from the French verb restaurer, meaning to restore, reflecting the idea that these establishments offered nourishment for both the body and the spirit. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, further accelerated changes in French dining culture. The Revolution dismantled the aristocracy and, with it, many of the lavish feasts that had defined noble life. However, this also meant that many chefs who had once served the aristocracy found themselves out of work. Some of them turned to the growing restaurant industry, bringing their skills and refined techniques to a broader audience. This democratization of dining helped to spread the principles of haute cuisine beyond the confines of the aristocratic table, making it accessible to the emerging middle class. In addition to these social and cultural shifts, the Enlightenment also influenced the ingredients and dishes that became popular in France. As global trade expanded, new ingredients from the Americas, Asia, and Africa found their way into French kitchens. Tomatoes, potatoes, and chocolate, once exotic and unfamiliar, began to be incorporated into French cuisine. The Enlightenment spirit of experimentation and openness to new ideas encouraged chefs to explore these new flavors and incorporate them into traditional dishes. One iconic example of this is the development of sauces. During the Enlightenment, French chefs refined the art of sauce making, creating the foundations for many of the classic sauces we know today, such as bechamel, velouté, and espagnole. These sauces were not just about adding flavor. They represented the precision and elegance that had become hallmarks of French cuisine. In summary, the Age of Enlightenment was a period of profound change for French cuisine. It was a time when food became more than just sustenance. It became a form of expression, a reflection of the intellectual and cultural shifts taking place in society. From the rise of haute cuisine to the birth of the modern restaurant, the culinary innovations of the Enlightenment continue to influence the way we think about and enjoy food today. So, as we move forward in this episode, keep in mind how these historical changes set the stage for the rich and refined traditions that define French cuisine to this day. As we continue our journey through the Age of Enlightenment and its impact on French cuisine, it's time to focus on some of the key figures who helped shape this culinary transformation. These individuals were not just chefs. They were innovators, philosophers of food, and architects of modern French cuisine. Their contributions laid the foundation for what we now consider haute cuisine, and their influence continues to resonate in kitchens around the world today. Let's start with one of the most towering figures in the history of French cuisine, Marie-Antoine Carême. Known as the King of Chefs and the Chef of Kings, Carême is often credited with bringing French cooking into the modern era. Born in 1784 into a humble family, Carême's rise to culinary fame was nothing short of extraordinary. He began his career as a kitchen boy in Paris, but soon caught the attention of some of the city's most prominent chefs. Carême's genius lay in his ability to transform cooking from a mere trade into an art form. He's best known for his work in developing haute cuisine, which emphasized the use of high-quality ingredients, elaborate preparation methods, and exquisite presentation. One of his major contributions was the concept of grande cuisine, a style of cooking that involved elaborate, multi-course meals with meticulously crafted dishes. This was a significant departure from the more rustic and straightforward meals of the past. Karim also revolutionized the way food was presented. He believed that food should be visually stunning and that presentation was just as important as taste. His intricate designs for pièces montées, towering decorative centerpieces made of sugar and pastry, became famous throughout Europe. These creations were not only delicious, but also works of art, often resembling architectural masterpieces. His influence on presentation set the standard for modern culinary aesthetics, where the visual appeal of a dish is as crucial as its flavor. But Karim's legacy goes beyond just aesthetics. He was a prolific writer and penned several cookbooks, including L'Art de la Cuisine Française, The Art of French Cooking, where he codified many of the techniques and principles that are still used in French cuisine today. His work laid the groundwork for the professionalization of cooking, and he's often credited with being one of the first celebrity chefs. Next, we turn our attention to François-Pierre Le Vaurain, another pivotal figure in the history of French cuisine. Born in 1615, Le Vaurain is often referred to as the father of modern French cuisine. His influence predates Carême, but his impact was equally profound. Le Vaurain was the author of Le Cuisinier François, published in 1651, a cookbook that marked a turning point in French culinary history. Before Le Vaurain's time, French cooking was heavily influenced by the medieval style, which often relied on heavy spices and complex combinations of ingredients to create bold flavors. However, Le Vaurain championed a more refined approach to cooking that emphasized the natural flavors of ingredients. He introduced techniques that are now fundamental to French cuisine, such as reducing sauces to concentrate their flavors and using butter instead of lard as a cooking fat. One of Le Vaurain's significant contributions was his introduction of the roux, a mixture of flour and fat used to thicken sauces. This simple yet transformative technique became a cornerstone of French cooking and remains essential in kitchens around the world today. His emphasis on clear broths, fresh herbs, and balanced seasonings helped to move French cuisine away from its medieval roots and towards the more sophisticated and nuanced flavors that characterize it today. Le Vaurain's influence didn't stop at technique. He also played a crucial role in the democratization of French cuisine. By publishing La Cuisine Françoise, Le Vaurain made sophisticated cooking techniques accessible to a broader audience. His book was one of the first to be printed rather than handwritten, making it available to a wider public and setting the stage for the spread of French culinary knowledge beyond the aristocracy. Finally, we arrive at Jean-Anthelme Brillat-Savarin, a name that might be familiar to those who love food and philosophy. Born in 1755, Brillat-Savarin was not a chef, but rather a lawyer, politician, and, most importantly, a gastronome, a person who is deeply knowledgeable about and appreciative of good food and drink. His most famous work, Physiologie du goût, The Physiology of Taste, published in 1825, is still considered one of the most important texts on gastronomy. Brillat-Savarin's approach to food was philosophical. He believed that gastronomy was not just about eating well, but also about understanding the deeper connections between food, culture, and society. In The Physiology of Taste, he wrote extensively about the pleasures of the table, the art of dining, and the relationship between food and happiness. His work is filled with witty aphorisms, the most famous of which is, "Tell me what you eat, and I will tell you what you are." Brillat-Savarin's influence on French cuisine lies in his emphasis on the cultural and intellectual significance of food. He viewed gastronomy as a science, a field of study that deserved as much respect as any other discipline. His writings elevated the status of food and dining, framing them as essential aspects of human experience and civilization. This intellectual approach to food resonated deeply with the Enlightenment ideals of reason and exploration, and it helped to solidify France's reputation as a culinary leader. Beyond his philosophical musings, Brillat-Savarin also contributed to the development of French cuisine through its advocacy of certain culinary practices. He was a proponent of moderation, savoring meals slowly, and appreciating the quality of ingredients. His ideas about the importance of balance and harmony in food influenced the way chefs and diners alike approached meals, laying the groundwork for the sophisticated and mindful dining culture that defines French cuisine today. In summary, Marie-Antoine Carême, François-Pierre Lavrain, and Jean-Anthelme Brillat-Savarin were not just influential figures in French cuisine, they were visionaries who transformed the way we think about food. Carême's artistry, Lavrain's technical innovations, and Brillat-Savarin's philosophical insights collectively helped to shape the identity of French cuisine during the Age of Enlightenment. Their legacies continue to influence chefs and food lovers around the world, reminding us that cuisine is not just about nourishment, it's about creativity, culture, and the joy of eating well. As we move forward in this episode, keep these culinary giants in mind. Their contributions to French cuisine are not just historical footnotes, they are the foundation upon which modern French cooking is built. Whether you're savoring a delicately prepared dish or reflecting on the cultural significance of your meal, you're engaging with the legacy of these remarkable individuals. As we continue our culinary journey through the Age of Enlightenment, we arrive at a pivotal development that would forever change the way people experience food: the rise of restaurants and a new culture of dining. Before the Enlightenment, the concept of dining out, as we understand it today, simply didn't exist. Meals were either eaten at home, in private settings, or at inns and taverns that offered basic, often communal fare for travelers. But in the 18th century, something remarkable happened in Paris. The modern restaurant was born, and with it came a revolution in how food was consumed and appreciated. The word restaurant itself, as we mentioned, comes from the French verb restaurer, meaning to restore, and originally referred to a rich, restorative broth served to patrons in early establishments. These broths, known as restaurants, were initially marketed as health-giving elixirs, meant to rejuvenate the weary or unwell. The first establishments to serve them were small shops that catered to the health-conscious elite, offering a quiet and refined alternative to the rowdy taverns and inns of the time. The first true restaurant, as we might recognize it today, is generally credited to a man named Boulanger, who opened his establishment in Paris in 1765. Boulanger's innovation was not just the food he served, but the way he served it. Unlike taverns that offered a limited, fixed menu at set times, Boulanger's restaurant allowed patrons to choose from a menu of prepared dishes at any time of the day. This flexibility, combined with the promise of high-quality, individually plated meals, set a new standard for dining that would soon spread across Paris and beyond. The rise of restaurants was closely linked to the cultural and intellectual currents of the Enlightenment. Paris was a city of ideas, where philosophers, artists, and intellectuals gathered in salons and cafes to debate, discuss, and share their thoughts. Restaurants provided a new kind of social space where people could engage in these activities over a good meal. The act of dining out became more than just a way to satisfy hunger. It became an opportunity to partake in the social and cultural life of the city. As our middle class grew in wealth and influence, there was an increasing demand for sophisticated and refined dining experiences that were previously the domain of the aristocracy. Restaurants catered to this demand by offering a taste of luxury and elegance, but in a more accessible and democratic setting. Dining out became a way for the middle class to display their refinement and engage in the culinary sophistication that had once been exclusive to the nobility. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, played a crucial role in further popularizing restaurants. The revolution led to the downfall of the aristocracy, and with it, many of the grand private kitchens that had employed some of France's best chefs. These chefs, suddenly out of work, turned to the burgeoning restaurant industry, bringing their expertise and flair for haute cuisine with them. As a result, the quality and variety of food available in restaurants increased dramatically. What had begun as simple dining establishments now evolved into places where one could experience the very best of French culinary artistry. This democratization of fine dining also led to the development of a key feature of modern restaurants: the menu. Before restaurants, meals were often dictated by what was available and served in large communal portions. The restaurant menu, offering a range of dishes that could be selected individually, allowed diners to exercise choice and indulge their personal tastes. This shift not only changed how food was served, but also how it was perceived. Dining became a more personalized and intentional experience, where the act of choosing a meal was part of the enjoyment. The restaurant also played a significant role in shaping the future of haute cuisine. With the rise of these establishments, the art of cooking became more public and more competitive. Chefs began to innovate, experiment, and perfect their craft in the hopes of attracting a discerning clientele. This led to the refinement of French cooking techniques, the creation of iconic dishes, and the development of the elaborate presentations that define French cuisine to this day. Moreover, the social role of restaurants extended beyond just eating. Parisian cafes and restaurants became important hubs for intellectual discourse, political discussion, and artistic collaboration. They were places where ideas were exchanged and where the cultural life of the city thrived. In many ways, the rise of restaurants mirrored the Enlightenment itself. Both were about breaking down old boundaries, encouraging individual expression, and fostering a spirit of exploration and refinement. In summary, the rise of restaurants during the Age of Enlightenment was a transformative moment in culinary history. It marked the beginning of dining out as a cultural experience, where food, conversation, and society intersected. This era not only introduced the concept of the modern restaurant, but also set the stage for the evolution of French cuisine as an art form. The restaurant became a symbol of the new social and culinary order, one that valued choice, sophistication, and the pleasures of the table. As we delve deeper into the culinary legacy of the Age of Enlightenment, it's time to explore the actual dishes and innovations that emerged during this transformative period. French cuisine, already renowned for its richness and diversity, became even more refined and sophisticated as chefs experimented with new techniques, ingredients, and presentations. Many of the iconic dishes and culinary practices that we associate with French cooking today have their roots in this era of intellectual and cultural flourishing. One of the most significant innovations of the time was the development of sauces, which became cornerstone of French cuisine. Before the Enlightenment, sauces were often heavy and used to mask the flavors of less than fresh ingredients. However, the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason and balance extended to the kitchen, where chefs began to focus on enhancing rather than overpowering the natural flavors of their dishes. This led to the creation of the mother sauces, bechamel, velouté, espagnole, and allemande, which served as a foundation for countless variations. These sauces were lighter, more refined, and allowed the quality of the ingredients to shine through. They became essential elements of French culinary art, and their influence can still be seen in kitchens around the world today. Another iconic innovation of the period was the refinement of pâté en croûte, a luxurious dish that epitomized the grandeur of haute cuisine. Pâté en croûte is essentially a savory pie, typically filled with a mixture of meats, game, or fish, encased in a rich, buttery pastry. While versions of pâtés had existed for centuries, it was during the Enlightenment that the dish was elevated to new heights. Chefs experimented with intricate fillings, elaborate decorations, and perfected the technique of creating a flaky golden crust. Pâté en croûte became a symbol of French culinary excellence, representing both the skill of the chef and the elegance of the meal. In addition to these savory creations, the Age of Enlightenment also saw significant advancements in the world of pastry and desserts. One of the most famous desserts to emerge from the period is crème brûlée, a creamy custard topped with a layer of caramelized sugar. The contrast between the smooth, rich custard and the crisp, sugary toppings delighted diners, and crème brûlée quickly became a favorite in French kitchens. While the exact origins of this dessert are debated, its rise to prominence during the Enlightenment reflects the growing appreciation for texture, flavor, and presentation in French cuisine. Similarly, the millefeuille, or thousand layers, became another iconic dessert of the era. This delicate pastry consists of layers of puff pastry filled with pastry cream and often topped with powdered sugar or icing. The precision required to create the perfect millefeuille, with its light, flaky layers and smooth, luscious filling, made it a test of a pastry chef's skill. Like many other culinary innovations of the time, the millefeuille was as much a feast for the eyes as it was for the palate. The Enlightenment also brought about a shift in the way food was presented and served. The concept of service à la Française, where all dishes were presented simultaneously in grand, elaborate displays, began to evolve. By the late 18th century, this style was being replaced by service à la Russe, or Russian service, where dishes were served in courses, allowing diners to focus on each dish individually. This change in service style influenced how chefs planned and prepared meals, encouraging a more thoughtful and deliberate approach to each course. The emphasis on sequencing and balance in a meal reflected the broader Enlightenment ideals of order and harmony. Another significant innovation of the period was the development of the vol au vent, a light hollow puff pastry filled with savory ingredients such as seafood, chicken, or mushrooms. This dish exemplified the Enlightenment's focus on elegance and refinement in cooking. The delicate pastry was both visually impressive and a perfect vessel for the rich, flavorful fillings. The vol au vent became a popular choice for formal dinners and banquets, where its intricate preparation and beautiful presentation could be fully appreciated. The Enlightenment period also saw the introduction of new ingredients and cooking methods, many of which were influenced by global trade and exploration. Ingredients like chocolate, coffee, and exotic spices became more widely available in Europe, and French chefs were quick to incorporate these new flavors into their dishes. For example, the introduction of vanilla from the Americas revolutionized French pastry making, leading to the creation of vanilla-infused desserts that remain popular to this day. One such example is the parfait, a layered frozen dessert made with cream, eggs, sugar, and various flavorings, often including vanilla. This dish reflected the Enlightenment's fascination with both science and indulgence. The ability to manipulate ingredients to create something as light and refreshing as a parfait was seen as a testament to the advances in both culinary and scientific knowledge. In addition to these specific dishes, the Age of Enlightenment also brought about a broader focus on the aesthetics of food. Chefs began to think more about the visual impact of their dishes, leading to the development of gastronomy, or the art of fine dining. This emphasis on presentation and the overall dining experience transformed the role of the chef from a simple cook to a creator of edible art. Meals became an opportunity to showcase not only the chef's technical skills, but also their creativity and imagination. The importance of presentation extended beyond the individual dish to the entire dining experience. Table settings became more elaborate, with carefully chosen linens, china, and silverware complementing the food. The arrangement of the table, the sequence of the courses, and even the timing of the meal were all carefully considered to create a harmonious and enjoyable dining experience. This holistic approach to dining was a reflection of the Enlightenment's emphasis on balance, order, and the pursuit of pleasure. In conclusion, the culinary innovation of the Age of Enlightenment were not just about creating new dishes. They were about reimagining the entire dining experience. From the development of refined sauces and pastries to the introduction of new ingredients and presentation techniques, this period marked a turning point in French cuisine. The dishes that emerged during this time, from pâté en croûte to crème brûlée, continue to be celebrated today, and the principles of balance, elegance, and creativity that defined Enlightenment cooking remain central to French culinary tradition. As we savor these iconic dishes, we are reminded of the rich history and cultural significance that each one represents. As we come to the end of our journey through French cuisine in the Age of Enlightenment, it's clear that this era was a defining moment in culinary history. From the birth of haute cuisine and the rise of the first modern restaurants to the creation of iconic dishes and culinary innovations, the Enlightenment left an indelible mark on French cooking. This was a time when food became more than just nourishment. It became an art form, a reflection of culture, and a way to engage with the intellectual and social currents of the time. Whether it's the delicate layers of a milfouille or the rich, comforting flavors of a classic bechamel, the legacy of this period lives on in every bite of French cuisine. As you explore French recipes in your own kitchen, remember the chefs and innovators who transformed cooking into the sophisticated, elegant experience we enjoy today. Consider trying your hand at a traditional dish from this era, perhaps a pâté en croûte or a vol au vent, and savor the history that comes with it. I hope this episode has inspired you to appreciate the rich history behind French cuisine and the cultural significance of the food we enjoy today. As always, the stories of food are stories of people, creativity, and tradition, and French cuisine during the Age of Enlightenment is a perfect example of how these elements come together to create something truly special. Thursday, we'll shift our focus to a completely different culinary tradition, the melting pot of flavors found in Hawaiian fusion cooking. Until then, I'm Kip Ferguson, encouraging you to keep exploring, keep tasting, and most importantly, keep enjoying the incredible journey that food takes us on. Bon appetit!